Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. I'm sitting here with Swindle. How are you?
I'm very well, you?
I'm fantastic. Fantastic.
Brilliant.
It's great to meet you the other night at Lemon Tree.
That's it, yeah.
PMC event. I assume everywhere you go is PMC speakers.
Yeah, currently, if I can get them, absolutely. Yeah. I love PMC speakers. Since hearing them at Metropolis in
Of course.
Stuart Hawke's room over there, I was just like...
What were you doing in Metropolis?
I've always mastered there.
Okay,
all
great.
my albums have been mastered with Stuart at Metropolis. Yeah.
Well, if people don't know you, which they might not, there's going to be a link to music down below. You're like, to say your stuff is eclectic would be understatement of the decade.
Yeah.
I felt like it was uniquely British, though. And to see lots of people be shocked about it, I was like, yeah, but that's...
It's what we do,
It's what we do, yeah. You listen to Massive Attack or Portishead back in the day.
Yeah.
That's what made it all so special, was all the blends of all the different genres.
Yeah. I think that's something that is uniquely British, actually, is we have these towns and cities like Bristol, where Portishead, Massive Attack are from, or London, where we have such a melting pot of cultures that are maybe more intertwined with each other than like places in America seems a little bit more segregated. So what you get as a byproduct of that is new genres of music and you know, people from different backgrounds collaborating and making, I don't know, Original Nutter by Shy FX and UK Apache, which is jungle ragga, you know, with this kind of Indian undertone. So yeah, what feels natural to us back home can sometimes seem like these big extreme juxtapositions, but it is kind of what we do, isn't it?
The music's incredible.
Thank you so much.
I was very, very impressed. Even your earlier stuff was still super eclectic, but I mean, incredibly musical as well. It's not some modern dance, for instance, modern music. I'm thinking to myself, it's all too many sound effects, too much, you know, like sound design, as it were. Yeah. You managed to blend that with actual melody, with real songs. Yeah, it's fantastic.
No, I can play literally all the tracks on every album, but I won't. But I just want to kind of give you that part of the journey that I had to go to, because imagine this is the first time you don't know anything, you buy what you think is a jazz album.
Psych!
I think some of the older...
I didn't understand my own brain at this point.
So much for that. Right?
I think that over the last maybe 30, 40 years, where technology is moving so fast, we're able to impress people with sonics. Yeah. So a techno song really is about the mix down. If a kick drum hits in the right kind of frequency, then you might only need a kick drum to make a dance floor move, whereas maybe before that people were leaning on musicality to impress people because the sonic spectrum was so much more limited. Sure. And I just love the idea of mixing those two things and being able to lean into traditional production techniques and musicality and do all that impressive stuff, but then also work with the, you know, all the technology that we have today and get that kind of sonic standard up. So that's the MO. Yeah. No,
I agree entirely. We've talked about it quite a lot. You know, you go back to the 70s and the low end just wasn't what we have now. Yeah. A stylus would pop out of the vinyl, you know.
Yeah. To counter that, the bass playing was second to none, and I still feel like some of the greatest records to ever be created were in the 70s and 80s. For me, you know, that's kind of like my favourite period. Yeah. I
mean, you did your latest album at Real World.
I did, yeah. The last two albums, actually.
Last two albums?
Yeah.
That must have been a heck of an experience.
Yeah, it's my favourite studio to record in ever. I try to go as often as possible if I have something big to do. The last album was very impromptu. The reason that we went there is because I booked it for the first day of easing of the first lockdown, so all studios were closed in the UK and everything like that, no one had seen each other. And actually it was the only space that we could go to that was safe, but by the standards at the time. So we had 12 people in this massive
control
room. Yeah, so we could bubble in there and all the rest of it, separate bathrooms and all this kind of thing. So
what a good excuse.
Exactly.
We went there because, you know.
Yeah, pretty much.
I love it. So give me some of your background. Did you grow up in Croydon?
I was born in Dulwich Hospital and lived in Brixton for maybe like the first 10 years of my life, and then we moved to a small town right next to Croydon.
What town?
Wallington it was called.
I know Wallington.
Banging in between Sutton and Croydon. I went to a high school in Sutton. I did end up moving into Croydon kind of as I got older and stuff like that.
I could be wrong, but I think Jeff Beck is from Wallington.
You're lying.
Yeah, I think so. Can somebody Google that? Will you Google that there, young Eric? I think it's Wallington. Yeah, I mean, it's all that same class as South London, which I know very well.
I love Jeff Beck as well. So I'm a son of a guitarist. So I grew up on Jeff Beck and, you know, George Benson, and, you know, all the greats, Joe Satriani, Pat Metheny, you know. These are kind of all my dad's records. At first, I was really getting into, because I was looking for samples, you know, when I was, you know, really young, maybe 12 years old. And then I just ended up getting into the music and stopped taking samples and started trying to create it myself, pretty much.
So are you a keyboard player?
Of such, people ask me if I play keyboards, and I say I play around. And the reason I say that is because I just know so many incredible musicians now. People like Reuben James, Joe Armand-Jones, who are just killing the keys. I do know my way around the keyboard and guitar and drums, but my main instrument, you know, that I would say I'm a high level at, is production, you know. But
you grew up in a very musical household.
Yeah.
So it's quite powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, so dad plays guitar. I'm one of 4 boys. By the time I'm 12, we've got like a sequencer on my dad's PC, and we'd fight for time to try and use it. We're remaking stuff that we know, you know. We got Jungle Warfare sample pack, and we're messing around with Amens, but then also trying to like remake Bob Marley and B.B. King.
Nice.
You know, at the same time. So now I look back on it, I can see that this was all training to what I do now. But at the time, we were just kind of doing what made sense to us, yeah.
Yeah. You started as a DJ, though, first. That's where you made your first money.
Yeah.
How did you get into that?
Growing up in the time that I did, jungle, garage, all these like great underground rave sound system movements were happening just kind of on our doorstep. So I remember quite clearly hearing pirate radio for the first time. I was about 10 and it just blew my mind. I'd never heard a breakbeat at 170 BPM. It's the most exciting thing ever. As a kid, I would do like the birthday parties of people at school and that kind of thing. And then I kind of actually came away from it and started producing for people that wanted to rap and sing, kind of just locally. And then I met these guys, Elijah and Skilliam, had a show on Rinse FM, a pirate radio station. And they were playing instrumental grime music. And they were like, you know, you should have a crack at this. I think you'd be good at it. And I did it. The first song I did was called Air Miles. Actually, it didn't have a title, but they mailed it out and we kept getting these videos back of it getting played in Holland and getting played in all these places that I had never been. So we named the track Air Miles, and then that led me to kind of 10 years of touring the world and DJing, which taught me a bunch about people, about what makes people dance, about cultures. I ended up recording a bunch of instruments in different countries. So, you know, I'd be in Japan and ask for a studio, Brazil, South Africa, China, you know, you name it. If I went there and it was different enough from back home, I would always say, well, to come here and not record something would be kind of a wasted opportunity. So. Or I'd play the show and be like, right, who's the local musicians? And like I'd be in Shanghai and be like, I want to record something I haven't recorded before. Oh, I know a guzheng player. What's a guzheng? Like, now I'm learning how to mic it, how to record it. And actually, this album, I learned a lot of my recording techniques the hard way through just being chucked in the deep end and having to record stuff that I had no experience with. And yeah.
Let's do the Shanghai just to give them a sense of that one.
I had to find someone in each language to say my name is Swindle and I represent peace, love and music. So anytime you hear like another language just speak on the album, that's what they're saying. Yeah.
You told me a story off camera about working at Abbey National.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Abbey National, for those who don't know, in America is what we
building
call
society.
a building society. Yeah. Basically a bank. It's changed name now. It's called Santander. But yeah, that was a job that I took after college. I actually lied about my qualifications to get the job. You could do that kind of thing back then. And yeah, that was my last job. I received my first royalty check while I was there. It was a humble £1,000, which is far more than I'd ever earned off of something that I'd done for myself. And it kind of gave me the confidence to quit my job. So after struggling for 5 years after that, I finally started getting somewhere. But it was the best decision I ever made, yeah. I haven't had a job since.
Tell us a bit about your setup. So here we're obviously in LA, not back in London. Is this a similar setup to what you have at home?
Yeah, so at home I've built something in my garden. I could send you some pictures and stuff. And it's very much kind of everything ready to go. So I've got drum kit in there, kind of things getting as small as possible, little 18-inch kick drum on it, Tamar kit. Everything's mic'd, ready to go, armed, you know, bunch of synths. I've been collecting keyboards for a long time, guitars and bits and bobs. Yeah, and I have everything amped, ready to go at all times.
What's your DAW?
Logic.
Logic?
Yeah,
oh, cool.
yeah. Used Logic for a long time now.
When you were living in Wellington, though, wasn't it all sort of FL Studio or Fruity Loops as it was then?
I'm a little bit older than Generation Fruity Loops. I just missed that one. I first learned on a program called Orchestra Plus.
I don't even know that.
It's so old, and we had the Sound Lab sound card.
I remember that.
Do you remember that? And
yeah, I remember
we used to spend all our weekends at computer fairs, you know, looking for these sound cards that we would have to. So I could build a computer and earth myself and put in a sound card now. I don't know if I'll ever need that skill again, but I'm glad I learned it. we learned Cubase, Reason, and then yeah, when I was about maybe 19, 20, the whole world was using Logic, so I learned it, and then I've got so comfortable in it now.
Was that period of Logic when they started bringing out these templates that were pretty much all the sounds?
Okay.
It was like pop, and you'd open it up and it'd have like a drum kit sound, a bass sound. I remember hearing stuff on the radio, and you're like, that's just a template.
Yeah, I secretly hate that stuff.
No, I know.
But,
I did at the time.
Yeah.
But I remember recognizing every other song on the radio, like, that's just using a template.
Yeah, I think all the DAWs do that now. And I mean, now everyone's kind of moved towards Ableton. Right. I've used Ableton for like live shows. So for a time I was touring my music live with a band, fairly big band, and we were using Ableton as like the kind of workhorse of that show. Yeah. That's cool as well. But for production, Logic is where I'm at.
So what about manipulating sounds? Because one of the things that's great about Ableton, of course, is you can just start with the sound, and, you know, it can be a sneeze, and then it's a snare drum, it's a bass line. Do you have those kind of same capabilities in Logic?
I think so. I personally think, you know, your biggest asset in the studio is your imagination. And if you can picture something, you'll find a way to kind of... Right. I think that's the best bit of gear in the studio. I work a lot in audio, so I like messing things up in the real world. So spent all morning setting up the Eventide yesterday just so we can make things sound silly in it. So, you know, I like resampling and reversing and changing the pitch of stuff and just repurposing sounds, but mostly by audio. I use a lot of audio. So
you like hardware? You like external hardware?
Yeah.
What kind of stuff do you have in your studio?
Most of what I've got is just about getting good signal in. Mm-hmm. So what have I got going on? So keyboards go into, I've got 2 racks, and they're called DAV Electronics. Guy in the UK makes them in his shed. He sells them out of KMR. Nice. Really nice preamps. So all my keyboards are preamped, and then they go from that into a Heritage Audio MCM 32 summon mixer, but I'm using that for inputs. So I'm just trying to get things in as high quality as possible. And then, you know, I got an old Lexicon PCM 92 and 1176 for my vocals.
Great.
SSL Fusion.
What's your vocal mic?
U87.
U87?
Yeah, 1073. You know,
nice.
Just keep it consistent.
That's great.
I like to have things in the studio that I think every studio should have, and U87, 1176, you know, 1073. I think are just staples, like a Fender Strat is. Other bits and but like sound modules, you know, Proteus. I like bits of gear that just tell like a certain. If I pull out a Korg Triton, I know I can go to a specific zone in it, and it will have a familiarity from a certain time. I like that about gear. So that's how my keyboards are. You know, I've got JP8000 for a very specific 90s thing, and
right.
The old Virus KB, but then I also have like a Moog Source, kind of, I think it's 1969. It's like one of the first digital analog Moog keyboards, which I would draw for if I'm looking for that particular sound. So
I did a song called One Day with Mattis Yahoo that had been written by Bruno, and all the sounds on it were all from a motif. All the sounds.
Yeah.
Not some of them.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
And just goes to show if you know your gear.
Yeah. We're talking about Stevie Wonder, we're talking about Zap and da-da-da. I'm like, well, let's get the DX7 up.
Right.
And the minute you play the bass patch in a DX7, you know exactly where you're at. And then you'll start to play kind of for that sound. And I just love sounds like that. Just iconic sounds. And the Motif is one of those ones, just like how many great songs have been played on that piano. Like, you know.
It's incredible. Is there any kind of go-to things you can't live without?
Outside of coffee? What could I not live without?
What's your main go-to keyboard? Is there one that you feel really inspired by that you can always come back to?
Currently, surprisingly, it's my Behringer Poly D.
That's great. It's good to know.
It's just set up and it is my bass. You know, I just use it as a bass synth. I often track bass synth in preparation for it to be replayed on guitar. And it just sits there, super easy. It's nice that it has MIDI if I want to, you know, I don't want to commit straight away. And yeah, I get more use out of that than I ever thought I would, actually.
Great. And it costs probably, 300 cents, 300 pesos, I should say.
Yeah, so I have a Slim Fatty, I have a Moog Source, these are, and yeah, I'm using the Poly D every day.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. I suppose it doesn't surprise me. Some of the greatest music of all time has been made with inexpensive gear and inexpensive equipment, It's
exciting at the moment, just like how good gear is becoming more accessible to people. I wouldn't dream of having so much gear back in the days, but now it's easier to get yourself a good synth, £600, get yourself basically a Model D. It's like no-brainer, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I don't know how much those bottom of the range, the smallest PMCs are, but they're still only they're like $3 or $4 grand. Yeah. But you used to have to spend 30 grand to get something as good.
Yeah.
Everything is changing for the better.
But the modern day 30,000 speaker is also incredible.
Yeah.
It's exciting,
Yeah, it's a great time to be making music. So what are you working on here in sunny Los Angeles?
Just producing. I've spent a lot of time in America, coming as a DJ, working on my own music. But I've never come here to just see what I can contribute as a producer. Yeah. And I do a lot of that back home, working with other artists and stuff outside of my own music.
It's great.
So really, I'm here and I've set up and I'm just building what I have back home out here.
Well, in LA, this is like the culture of the writer-producer.
Yeah.
I mean, have you had tons of artists come through?
Absolutely, yeah. I've been working most days, every minute that I can, and I kind of fall asleep at the end of the day, wake up, I'm ready for my next session. But it's great. Really, really, really enjoying it. And, it's about networking and but it's also just about like building those relationships that will lead us to the music. That's what's really worked for me at home, actually, is, it's easy sometimes to be like, get in with this person, get in with that person. But actually just finding the people that you have like real studio chemistry with and then really like leaning into that is what's worked for me back home. So I'm hoping to really come across those people here and figure out who those artists are going to be for me.
Amazing. Is this your first time doing writing production stuff in LA?
Yeah. It's my first time here working outside of myself, you know.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing. Honestly, I think you'll kill it in that world.
I hope so, man. I appreciate that. But, you know, I just want to contribute what I can, man.
Yeah. Well, I think the fact that you can play instruments, you love the real instruments and you can blend it together with, like, you know, in a modern way is a huge deal.
Feels like a lifetime of training to get to this point. Speaking of that, actually, I do feel like getting to this age, potentially I'm coming to like my golden age.
Sure.
That's what I feel like. I feel that unlike a lot of other things in music or just entertainment in general, is that producers, I think, get better over time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know,
acquired knowledge, yeah.
Acquired knowledge, and I look at, I don't know, Dre doing 2001 at 36, or Quincy doing Thriller, and I'm just like, I'm approaching this time, you know. Even when I'm back home and I'm talking with people like Guy Chambers and and I learn just how much was done before Robbie Williams' Angels or whatever, and then I'm like, it's taken me all of this learning and touring and working with artists.
The guy was in World
developing.
Party, he had the Lemon Trees, the band. I used to, see him around London all the time.
Yeah, this is it. And it's like, I really believe that actually that's where I'm coming to now. So I'm on this quest of learning, working on film and TV as well at the moment a little bit, learning that thing. And getting ready for my, you know, golden years. So as I approach my 40s,
you got plenty of time.
Yeah, when I say golden years, I just mean,
I know what you mean.
You know, the time where I really prove my worth as a producer. You know.
Amazing. How many artists have you been working with? Are they coming back round doing multiple songs? You finish? I mean, you're taking it through right to the end. Yeah,
at the moment, it's like I had 2 days with one artist, 1 day with most of them. So it's kind of been like a revolving door.
Nice.
And I guess halfway through we go, right, this has really worked. And
I think you'll do well.
I hope so. And I appreciate that coming from you. I know I kind of made a beeline when we started talking. I had to let you know it's like so much of my journey going from, you know, working with the tools I have, underground, figuring this all out, moving into more traditional production, recording instruments, playing instruments. It has taken like a great deal of learning, and one thing that's been great for that is YouTube, you know.
Yeah.
I've been there YouTubing, micing up drum kits an hour before the session because I've never done it before, you know. I had to learn like this. So content like what you make, you know, has been a massive part of that. So
thank you.
To kind of get that love back is,
I always think of Al Schmidt. So Al was like assisting for like maybe 6 months, a year or something.
Yeah.
And one day the engineer doesn't show up, and he's like, what am I going to do? And so the guy whose session was says, I suppose you're it.
Yeah. So
he engineered his first session, and I said to him, who was the guy? He goes, Duke Ellington.
Nice. Wow. Yeah.
You know, Jeff Emmerich was 19 when the EMI had a strike with the engineers went on strike because it was a union, and George Mine's like, so I suppose you're the engineer for Revolver, as it turned out to be, you know.
Wow.
So, you know, it's like, I think there's so much more to what we do. Just we bringing the love and the passion and the want and the need to do something great. And like you said earlier, the creativity is your biggest strength. It's better than all gear.
Yeah. Otherwise, you know, you've got nothing to put through the gear.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can be overwhelming. Going, oh, I've got to use this. I've got to use that. I've got to use that.
What do you think of then? Like, because there's all this. Whenever I watch a video, and like one of my videos, I turn it on. I always have to see, like, you know, somebody selling chord MIDI packs and made up and stuff like that. I had to ask.
Yeah, I'll be honest, like when I first started seeing the chord MIDI pack adverts that will not leave me alone.
They follow me everywhere.
Yeah, it kind of annoyed me.
Yeah.
But I think it's a two-sided coin, and
I agree.
You know, I don't want to be the guy that...
Don't want to be the wagging finger guy. You kids!
Yeah, I don't want to grow grumpy because things are changing, because if things hadn't changed and become more accessible to me, then I wouldn't be here. So I think it's amazing that people are able to access chords, because people are going to make music with nice chords in them, and that is a good thing. I do sometimes feel sad that people don't feel the need to learn. And that's always the advice that I give to younger musicians that I come across and producers. I'm like, just take the time to learn. Just even if it's the basics, just understand something. What happens when nobody can play the chords that this MIDI pack is giving them? People program instruments that they've never understood. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I've had
Makes
people
sense.
come
I don't understand most of my stuff.
Yeah, but what I mean is people come to the studio and they see a glockenspiel and they go, what's that? And I say glockenspiel and they go, is that what a glockenspiel looks like?
Yeah.
I use it all the time.
Yeah, right.
Because they just hit it on a MIDI.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is cool because people use things in a way that they shouldn't be. But I'm also like, you know, if you're going to write string or horn part, you should probably write in the range of the instrument. Or it'd be nice, you know, these things are going to help. Learn the rules and then break them on purpose, I think, sometimes. That's really my thing.
If somebody creates some music, even if they've got a lot of tools that are helping them, if it gets them excited to want to go to the next stage, then...
Yeah. And I know what learning has done for me. You know, I was working with musicians and didn't know how to communicate with them. So then I'm like, oh, gosh, right, let me learn this stuff. Yeah. And it's been difficult, you know, but it's been so worth it. And if it wasn't for working with people that know more than me and being open to learn and taking that time to do that, I don't think I'd be here in the same way.
Swindle, thank you ever so much.
Absolute pleasure.
I really, really appreciate it. Please leave a whole bunch of comments and questions below. Tell us a little bit about your journey. We'd love to know how you're getting on with your music. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Swindle. Appreciate it.
Peace.
So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, toutes ciao. Goodbye.